And you said you were playing on a shale pitch in Levenshulme. I mean, diving around on that must have been painful.
Not really. When you're a kid, you don't really, I mean, I'm sure Nathan will say, you don't really feel the scrapes and pains. In fact, if you didn't have a scratch or something, you'd think you weren't trying hard enough. So it was great, really. And, it sort of made me quite a tough person, which, being in goals, you have to be physically and mentally tough. So then that did help me.
What was Levenshulme like in those days? Because obviously it's going through a period of gentrification now, isn't it? There's all these sort of cool bars and restaurants and things. What was it like in those days?
It was just starting to turn the corner. I suspect many years prior to my parents moving there, it was quite an up-and-coming place. Then it had a bit of a blip. But it really is a popular place to live now. So my mum's still there, God rest her soul. She's still there. My father passed away, unfortunately, a few years ago. But, I still go through Levenshulme every other day. And where we played on that shale pitch, as I was sort of joining City, there was another group of lads came along. And two of them happened to be Noel and Liam Gallagher, who often when I was running past the shell pitch doing a bit of extra training, the lads would shout out to me, "Hi Alex, how are you?" And I didn't know who they were at the time, but they knew who I was. So ironically, I was Noel and Liam Gallagher's hero, and not knowing who they were. And when I see the lads today, they're still brilliant. They lived in a place called Burnage next to Levenshulme, but it's now nicknamed Bernage, mainly because of those two.
Yeah. So this shell pitch, it seems to have been a breeding ground for famous people. Did you ever play there?
No, I didn't play there, but I did play on a shell pitch when I was at school, and it is a bit uncomfortable, but it's just a place to play football, isn't it? It's like the step up from concrete.
So tell us then about your joining of City. How did those conversations first come about? How excited were you, your family, all that kind of thing?
My family didn't know much about football, which helped me in the long run. My parents came over from Jamaica. They didn't know much about Manchester City. So I got in the school team, and at the time, the youth team coach here, Steve Fleet, apparently was looking for a goalkeeper. I didn't know. And he spoke to my year tutor, a lad called Bert Jackson, and he said, "Oh, well, we've actually got a young lad. He's just gone in goals. He's a local lad from Levenshulme. And he's quite a good goalkeeper." So Steve Fleet invited me into Main Road 2 nights a week. We used to come in after school and do training. There was a gym inside the old Main Road Stadium. And when I got to 16, they took a chance and signed me on as an apprentice footballer.
What was the academy like in those days?
It was totally different from today. It wasn't an academy, it was a school of excellence at the time. You just used to come in 2 nights a week and that was it. We'd play the matches on a Saturday. We had an old training ground in Cheadle, on Park Road, Cheadle, where we played our A and B team games. So it was just great, nice to be involved. My parents didn't have a car, so I had to be picked up everywhere I went. But coming back to my parents, what really helped me was I was telling them that I'd just signed for Manchester City, and no disrespect to the club at the time, they just thought it was a local pub team. They didn't realise it was a professional football club. Yeah. But that really helped me because...
Takes the pressure off you.
Absolutely correct. I was lucky enough to work in the academy in the early days for many, many years, and it can be really difficult for the young players, especially because their parents put a lot of pressure on the kids. I never had that. I just said, I'm off to play for the Young Man City team, and they just said, "All right, see you later," thinking I was just going on a park pitch somewhere.
That's brilliant. What did you feel when you first started coming through? Do you feel pressure from family or friends? Or?
I didn't feel pressure, but I think maybe I've got a slightly different perspective on it because, I was only really allowed to play if I was doing well in school and stuff. So I almost felt like that was the bonus as opposed to the standard.
Yeah.
But I know that there were other people within my team where it was the opposite. School didn't matter anymore because they just need to make sure they were ready for the game on the Saturday or the Sunday. But it's good, and I was going to ask Alex actually. For me, when I joined the academy, I was 10. Yeah. I didn't really support a team at that point. I was watching lots of Italian football because that was the main league and stuff like this, in the mid-90s. But then it's as soon as I start wearing the same kit as the team that's at Main Road, as soon as you start turning up at Main Road, you're seeing the players, you're seeing the fans, the identity started to form. Did you support City before you joined, or was it something that sort of changed as
That's a great question because the answer to your question is yes, I was a massive Manchester City fan, but in those days I had a couple of friends. One of them was a City fan, and the other one was a United fan. So in the early days, we'd go to Main Road one week and we'd go to Old Trafford the following week, and you could do that. There was no issues in getting tickets or anything like that. You could just go and pay and get in. When I went to Old Trafford, I enjoyed it, but I didn't get that buzz, that feeling I did at Manchester City. And in the early days, the old Kipak stand, if you got in early as a kid, there were 2 tunnels leading centrally into the stand at the Kipaks where people stood. But as a kid, you could climb up on the wall and sit astride the wall and watch the players. And for me, seeing my heroes run out, Joe Corrigan, Tommy Booth, Francis Lee, Colin Bell, it was amazing. And '69, they won their cup final, and that's when it cemented me as a Man City fan.
I was going to mention Joe Corrigan. With City, you've got a history of great goalkeepers, even going back to the years, those years when we weren't necessarily a great team. We've always had good goalkeepers.
Yeah.
He must have been someone you really looked up to when you were kind of emerging and pushing your way into the team.
He did, and we've had a special bond. At the time, there was also another goalkeeper, ironically from Scotland, where at the time people were saying Scottish goalkeepers are not very good, called Keith McRae. So it was Joe Corrigan and Keith McRae were the 2 main goalkeepers when I joined the club, and I was the 3rd choice. But, most players, when they're not in the team, sometimes want the person in their place not to play well, not necessarily for the team to lose, but not to play well, so they would get a chance of playing. But with the goalkeepers, we didn't, because we knew if we made a mistake, more often than not, it would mean we're going to concede a goal and we'd probably lose a game. So at no time did we ever wish each other bad. If anything, we did totally the opposite, because we knew how difficult it was. I still see and work with Joe Corrigan today. Is not only just my hero, but one of my closest friends, and it was a privilege to follow somebody like him, Keith McRae, and going back further, there was the Swifts and the Troutmans.
You see that mentality, do you think that's the exception, or do you think that's like the norm, to essentially support someone that's playing the position that you want?
I think more so for goalkeepers, we didn't want them to do badly. I don't know how it works quite for outfield. You probably know better than me, but it's so difficult being a goalkeeper, because you got 40 or 50,000 people there, and if you make one error, and you can't think you've just got to think of positives and making great saves. So before a game, I used to sort of look out on the pitch and visualise myself, throw myself around and just get my fingers to things and try to put positive thoughts into my head.